It is with deep sorrow that I address you today. My dear mother, Her Majesty the Queen, served as an inspiration and role model for me and my entire family throughout her life. For many years, Queen Elizabeth's letter to King Charles was misplaced. Speaking of the Queen, her private correspondence has been the subject of a dispute. The letter has now been located and made public. It presents an honest and significant side of the mother-son relationship that most people haven't seen before. What caused this letter to remain secret for so long? The Queen wanted Charles to know what? Let's investigate the meaning of this misplaced message. The letter that was kept secret. Things slowed considerably after Queen Elizabeth's death. After Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's death was announced by Buckingham Palace, everyone turned on their televisions and lowered their flags. A sense of loss was prevalent throughout the nation. Something significant awaited in Balmoral Castle, where she spent her last moments. While the country watched the happenings in London, a red box was present. She had been accustomed to these boxes. She got one from the government every day, full of documentation. She continued to read them even after her health started to deteriorate. She carried out her duties all the way to the finish. However, this specific red box contained more than just papers. It included more than the standard government files when Sir Edward Young, her private secretary, accessed it. There were 2 envelopes in it. One had his name on it. King Charles received the other. These weren't directives for the legislature. They weren't for world leaders or ministers. The Queen wrote these letters in her capacity as a mother, before her time ran out. One more message. Initially there was misunderstanding. For some, it was a farewell. Some thought it might contain her final desires. Quiet discussions began slowly behind the palace walls. The majority of the letter is still confidential and has not been made public. However, some close to the royal family have revealed a few lines, and a lot is said by just few words. According to those close to the letter, it started with a straightforward statement. She said that she was no longer with Charles if he was reading it. Her speech was not that of a queen. Her voice was that of a mother. She expressed her pride in him, for who he had become, not because he was a king. She spoke of the hardships he had experienced. Diana is gone. Diana, Princess of Wales, was killed in a car accident, according to sources from Paris, enduring the pressure from the public and waiting a long time to assume the throne. She could see how much that had weighed on him. However, she also thought it made him stronger. She also wanted him to understand that he was prepared. One aspect of it stuck with the people who read it. His crown will never feel as heavy as hers, she wrote. Not because of the world events that are taking place. However, a large number of individuals would be observing. There was more to that one line than met the eye. It has nothing to do with the crown's weight. It has to do with pressure. Pay attention, the type that endures forever. She was well aware of how difficult it would be for him, and the weight he would need to bear, despite the fact that she had led through joy, change, and conflict. She was a mother still. The future of her son was still important to her, even after she had left. Being a king in the modern world means more than just donning a crown and adhering to custom. It entails being watched all the time. Every action is evaluated. Online videos, social media, and news networks all discuss every word. Queen Elizabeth was well aware of this. She had witnessed the evolution of royalty's function. Royal events were no longer the only thing the people desired. They desired a human-feeling person, someone having empathy, integrity, and interpersonal skills. The Queen gently reminded Charles of this new reality in her farewell letter. The crown had a rich history, but the wearer had to live in the present. She told him. She subtly urged him to follow his emotions, rather than the rules. Above all, she allowed him to be himself in his role as king. To lead in his own way, not to imitate her. She had such faith in him, as evidenced by that single message. She also expressed her opinions on the true meaning of leadership. For her, the role of a monarch was not about dominating others. Serving them was the goal. A competent leader should maintain a relationship with the people and listen with an open mind. The letter grew increasingly intimate as it went on. She talked about family, including the good times and the bad. The grandchildren. Here are some of the royal grandchildren's own thoughts about what made their grandmother so unique. As a way to honor the Queen from those who knew her best. Later in life, Charles rediscovered his love for Camilla. She even acknowledged that there were times she wished she had handled differently. She admitted that she hadn't always been the ideal mother, even though she didn't express her love to Charles directly. She was always there, observing, caring, and hoping he might sense it. This letter was not written by her in her capacity as Queen Elizabeth II. As a mother who cherished her son, she composed it. Being king is more than simply a title, it carries a burden. There is a lot of responsibility involved. Charles now bears that obligation since he waited longer than any other person in British history to become king. He understands what it means to wait. He spent many years living in the shadow of a king, who appeared to be larger than life. For Prince Charles, it has been a long journey. 70 years waiting for a job he never requested, following a path he didn't choose. However, we have come to Wales to gain insight into the next king, in what may be the last few days before the Prince of Wales takes the throne. It goes without saying that his mother, Queen Elizabeth, questioned his suitability for the position. Could he live up to the standards? An explanation might be found in a letter from the Queen. It demonstrates that Charles is not required to emulate his mother. All he has to do is lead with the heart she thought he possessed. Her letter was honest, encouraging, and full of kindness. This implies that Charles might feel more prepared than ever to lead in his own way, as well as to serve. Wearing a crown and conveying a blessing are two different things. It makes a huge difference when that blessing comes from a mother like Queen Elizabeth, who is renowned for her elegance, power, and wisdom. Although they were meant for Charles, her parting remarks apply to everyone. They have the feel of a soothing voice from the past that is still useful now. This letter wasn't merely a farewell. Even in her absence, it remains a reality, a lesson, and a gift. There are other significant problems within the royal family that require addressed. Even though many people applaud the Queen's letter, in a recent private communication, Princess Anne showed an aspect of royal life that most people don't see. For Anne, living in a royal palace was frequently quite different from the luxurious and comfortable lifestyle that many people envision. She lived a lonely, stressed, and melancholy life behind the opulent walls and royal persona. She was saying goodbye to more than simply a place when she left Buckingham Palace. It has to do with disclosing a long-kept secret. Many were taken aback by what she stated. Despite its fame and beauty, Anne claimed that the palace never felt like home. She frequently felt stuck. The public kept a close eye on her life. There was more to being a royal than merely dressing up and going to party. It required sacrificing one's happiness in order to satisfy the needs of others. Despite having all the money she required, she acknowledged that something was lacking. She was never free to live her life as she pleased. Anne did not conceal the difficulty of her time at the palace. Even when she was depressed or exhausted, she had to smile for the cameras. In reality, the life that others looked up to was packed with responsibilities that allowed little time for her to unwind. Princess Anne is at Deucalion Station, which is located in Cyprus's British sovereign base area. She did not have it all since she was born into a royal family. At times it meant being less in charge of her own decisions, less free, and less at ease. Anne also talked about how, despite the presence of relatives and employees, she felt alone in the palace. She frequently thought that nobody truly knew how she felt. Despite the palace's size and rich history, she felt that her voice was frequently disregarded there. She was viewed by many as the silent, powerful princess who never voiced any complaint. However, only she was fully aware of the great emotional burden she bore within. Anne made it apparent in her farewell that leaving Buckingham Palace meant more than just moving away. She made the choice to regain control over her life. Living under a spotlight that prevented her from being herself was something she no longer desired. No one in British history waited as long as Charles did to become king. He spent the majority of his life in the background, cautiously balancing his presence with not overshadowing his mother, Queen Elizabeth. He was aware of the public's skepticism, but it seemed to lessen once the Queen's private letter to Charles was made public. She spoke from the heart, not the norms or expectations. She had faith that he could lead, not as a replica of her, but as himself. That small gesture had an impact. Charles wasn't taking her place. She was quietly supporting him as he stepped into his own. Charles found the kind of affirmation that titles and crowns cannot provide. It was a mother's trust, not a huge royal command. Charles ascended to the throne, but another royal left in a totally different manner. As Princess Anne left Buckingham Palace, she told a tale that altered the public's perception of life in the royal family. Her world appeared flawless from the outside, complete with castles, jewels, and respect. However, she never felt at home at the palace. It was an environment of perpetual accountability, where being observed was commonplace and speaking up was not. Despite doing everything that was required of her, Anne acknowledged that she frequently felt uncomfortable. She claimed that the want to go had been growing for a while. This was not an overnight decision. She felt as though she was living someone else's version of her life after years of stillness. Her commitment and discipline were commended, but few realized the emotional toll. She didn't feel like she belonged despite all the wealth and prestige. Buckingham Palace's fortifications were no longer a barrier, they were limiting. Nobody anticipated the exodus. Moving houses wasn't the only thing Anne had to say goodbye to. It was about abandoning a way of life that demanded everything and returned very little in the way of calm. It was her first time complaining. She showed up, grinned, and did what was customary. However, she expressed in that last note what she had suppressed for years, that she was emotionally spent from the royal environment. Her candor was so uncommon that it was striking. Rarely do royals talk like this, and yet here she was, revealing the bare reality of palace life by tearing it apart. Silent bitterness, loneliness, and strain. She didn't harbor resentment. She was worn out. "I'm sick of acting as though fulfilling obligations are a given." While Anne's remarks did not criticize the monarchy, they did cast doubt on the notion that it is always effective, because happiness is a given when one is royal. She wanted room to be herself, even if she had done her share. The rituals and the cameras were no longer necessary for freedom was what she needed. Everything in the palace appears to be flawless. Ceremonies, titles, and courteous smiles. However, Anne's decision made it clear that there is a price for perfection. She had been going to events, giving speeches, and placing herself last for decades. It was more than just work. It was about constantly being seen, and never having complete control over the course of her life. Eventually, she acknowledged that the pressure had accumulated over time, that she still felt alone, despite being surrounded by people. She didn't only say goodbye with emotion, it was authentic, and this was significant for someone like Anne, who doesn't often discuss her personal life. Anne's choice was not solely a reflection of her own difficulty. It seemed to be a subliminal message to other family members who might be experiencing similar emotions. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been in the news lately for taking a back seat. However, Anne, carrying out a comparable action, has its own consequence. People are also reminded of the younger royals. What does it say about the rest of them, if Anne, with her strength and experience, feels overpowered? How much strain must they be feeling? What she did might be the beginning of something new. Not just one individual opting for peace, but a more significant shift in the royal family's operations. Laura Lopes and her brother Tom grew raised in a secure, normal, and calm upper-class environment. For a time, things appeared straightforward and their family was not in the spotlight. However, subtle signs of strain began to show as she grew older. Her mother, Camilla, immediately piqued the interest of those around her. Concerns were raised regarding her tight relationship with Prince Charles. Laura was initially perplexed as to why it was so important, but gradually, she came to see that the public was judging her family for reasons beyond her control. The issues between Charles and Princess Diana were frequently attributed to Camilla. People believed the press's portrayal of her as the one who destroyed a fairy tale. Laura was followed everywhere by this. She received different treatment from several of her teachers at school. Behind her back, students conversed. People outside her home had their own thoughts. Being young,
Laura was attempting to comprehend how relationships functioned while navigating viewpoints that weren't her own. Her parents separated in 19. Her family's changes were unpleasant, but so was the fact that their personal problems were often included in news reports. According to Laura, her early years were stressful. She lived between the perception of her mother and the person she knew in real life. She saw Camilla as a strong, compassionate woman. She was an issue to everyone else though. Laura continued to admire her mother despite all the pressure. She observed Camilla's composure in the face of harsh criticism from the media. She observed how her mother continued to move forward despite the derogatory remarks made about her in the press. Laura was really affected by such strength. It taught her to be calm in the face of adversity. Suddenly associated with royalty, Laura's life took a drastic turn in 2005 when Camilla married Prince Charles and became the Duchess of Cornwall. She wasn't brought up in palaces or prepared for royal responsibilities. She had to get used to being a member of the royal family, even though she was already an adult and leading her own life. Laura was not raised in a world where she was constantly watched or with cameras flashing at her. However, that changed after the wedding. She had to learn how to act in front of the public, attend important occasions, and adhere to customs. She wasn't naturally good at it. She never sought notoriety or prestige. All she wanted was a tranquil life, but all of a sudden, that was no longer possible. There were expectations and regulations associated with being around the royal family. It required her to watch her words, her behavior, and even her posture in official pictures. Despite Laura's sympathy for her mother, the royal realm felt uneasy and remote. Although they have never been close, her relationship with Prince William and Prince Harry has always been cordial. Although they are married, their recollections are not the same. Laura was not raised among them. Their early years were marked by loss and strong social pressure, and she wasn't present. It was made more difficult by the already traumatic past between their parents. William and Harry have been open about their feelings of grief and resentment toward Camilla following their parents' divorce. The bad guy was her. In their marriage, she was the third spouse. She had to repair her reputation. Laura, who has consistently stood up for her mother, has never made an effort to get involved in their tale. She realized that their experience was not the same as her. Each of them was coping with suffering in a different manner. According to many who knew them, Laura and William had some uncomfortable moments in the early years following Camilla's marriage to Charles. He was still grieving for his mother, and he occasionally held Camilla responsible for Diana's suffering. Laura resisted, because she was adamant that her mother had been treated unfairly. She did not believe Camilla was solely to blame. She also thought that Charles had taken decisions that had harmed other individuals. When Prince Harry published his book Spare years later, the narrative gained momentum once more. In the book, he depicted Camilla in a scathing tone, stating she cared more about her public image than about how her actions affected individuals. Although Laura never spoke in public, those close to her said that the book severely disturbed her. It was more than simply words. It was about being pulled back into a difficult period of her life that she had attempted to leave behind. Additionally, it strained her relationship with Harry. Their already tense relationship had become considerably more strained. Laura remained focused on her own life despite everything. She did not take the royal route. Away from cameras and royal responsibilities, she sought her own path. She established a reputable career in the art world by working with organizations such as the Peggy Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and later assisting in the opening of 11, a gallery in London. She didn't spend her time posing for photographers. Instead, she supported up-and-coming artists. Laura didn't require public recognition or regal titles. She established her reputation on her own terms. Laura quietly created something for herself, away from the drama, but still influenced by everything that had happened before. While the world continued to gaze at Camilla's position on the kingdom, Harry Lopes, a former model who went on to become a chartered accountant, married Laura, and their wedding, which brought together the Parker Bowles and royal families, was held at a modest church in Wiltshire. A subtle bond between mother and daughter was evident when Laura wore a dress designed by Anna Valentine, the same designer who created Camilla's wedding gown. Eliza, Laura's daughter, and Gus and Louis, their twin sons, were the couple's subsequent 3 children. Laura was clear from the start that she intended to raise her kids in a quiet, private setting. She didn't want public pressure or media attention to influence their life. In 2011, Eliza made a fleeting public appearance as a bridesmaid at Prince William and Kate Middleton's wedding. Since then, however, Laura has kept her 3 kids out of the spotlight. She has always valued a peaceful, caring home over celebrity or prestige. Despite avoiding the spotlight, she is unable to fully evade public exposure due to her family's royal links. The coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla in 2023 was one of those occasions. Alongside their grandma, Laura's twin sons participated in the event as pages of honor. It was a moment that subtly demonstrated how Camilla's life had transformed over the years, and how her 2 facets had united, but Laura chose to remain in the background. Even during such a significant occasion, she focused on her kids and avoided attention-seeking. She is courteous during formal gatherings, according to those who have known her, but she typically stays away from personal contact with the larger royal family. She likes peaceful places and people she knows, but one of the most significant aspects of her life is her relationship with Camilla. Laura respects Camilla's fortitude in enduring years of criticism, without allowing it to alter who she is. Laura, however, is aware of how challenging it was for their family to become entangled in the turmoil surrounding Camilla and Prince Charles. Camilla and Laura lost a lot of their little private moments together, as she grew increasingly interested in royal life. They still have a tight bond though. According to several insiders, Camilla has the greatest amount of faith in Laura. Actually, it is reported that Camilla is anxious around Laura not because she is afraid, but rather because she values her daughter's opinion greatly. That speaks much about their mutual trust. Laura sees a distinct side of Camilla at home, one that only a daughter would comprehend, despite the fact that the outside world frequently concentrates on her regal appearance. Even when Laura didn't want the attention, the media has been quite interested in her personal life. Everything has been covered, including her wedding, her kids, and her appearances at events. Even though she has put a lot of effort into her career and the art world, her accomplishments are rarely given the same recognition. Rather, she is frequently viewed as a continuation of her mother's regal heritage. It has been difficult for her. She has made an effort to live a life that is exclusively her. Her stepfather is now king, and her mother is now queen, so it's even more difficult to stay out of the royal spotlight. For years, Queen Elizabeth concealed her misplaced letter to King Charles. We get a peek of a hitherto untold aspect of their connection now that it has been made public. It's a heartfelt, candid, and perhaps even unexpected moment. What do you believe the true meaning of this letter was for their bond, and how may it alter all of our preconceived notions? Please share your opinions in the comments section below.